right, we're gonna start. In compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, I call this meeting of the Manor Independent School District to order on
June 10th at 5:00 p.m.
Let the record show that a quorum is present. This meeting has been duly called, and notices of this meeting have been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. We will now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now for the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag, pledge allegiance to the state, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
We will now take volunteers for the vision and mission statement.
Manor ISD is the best district in Texas, where we provide an equitable education for all scholars and graduate them ready to become leaders in our community.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. That was the vision. Mission.
Collectively, as a community, Manor ISD provides equitable resources, a safe learning environment, and high-quality educational services for all scholars to successfully achieve and reach their full potential.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. The board will now adjourn to closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074-071-129. At
5:02 p.m.
Right.
I think so. Okay.
Okay. The board would now return return from closed session at
5:46 PM.
we will move to public forum. Are there any, Ms. Perez? Okay. We'll move to item 7.1, consideration approval of the hire of principal at Lagos Elementary School.
Madam President, I move that the board approve Carolyn Parker as the new principal of Lagos Elementary School as presented in closed session.
I have a motion by Dr. Thomas. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Cortez. All of those in favor? Motion passes 7-0.
Trustees, I have the pleasure of presenting to you Ms. Carolyn Parker. We're live streaming, so you can go away to the TV. You gotta go into the U over here.
Yes. Walk of fame. So how do I know? Oh, yeah.
You just wave and say hi.
I can't tell which one it is. Oh, there we go. Hi, everybody. Good evening.
Yeah, did you just say a brief?
Oh, I'd love to. I'm gonna fix them.
Well, actually, went to face the trustees.
I am excited to be here tonight, excited to have this opportunity. Been in Manor for 3 years now, and that's a short time in my career, but a good time. I've been able to watch the district grow and evolve. I've been very excited at the changes that I'm seeing, making me confident to want to stay in our district. So I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to stay and grow in a different leadership position moving forward. And great things are going to continue to happen on our campus. I'd love to see you visit us on campus next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will now move on to item 7.2, consideration and approval of the hire of principal of Shadow Glen Elementary School.
I move that the board approve Chelsea Young as the principal of Shadow Glen Elementary School as presented in closed session.
Thank you. I have a motion by Ms. Stephanie Rodriguez Barnett and a second by Ms. Durden. All of those in favor?
Yay.
Motion passes 7-0.
Trustees, I'd like to present to you Chelsea Young, the once and former Manor ISD employee who is now back with us once again. So Chelsea, why don't you come on around?
Thank you.
Okay, well, that's not awkward at all. Okay. Thank you guys so much. I am honored. This is a blessing to me. I'm so happy to be back. I'm ready to hit the ground running. I'm just very honored and thankful for this opportunity. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to get our kids to academic excellence and success and just really pour into our community. So thank you so much, and I just can't wait to get started. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Be back. Yes, ma'am.
We will now move on to the budget workshop, item 8.
Everybody's welcome to learn all about the budget if you like. You won't insult me if you step outside and take pictures of your families, but you're gonna be talking money for a while now. Okay, well, trustees, we will go through the budget workshop. Obviously, this is for the benefit of both the public and for yourselves. You have in front of you, I know it's a little small, I was trying to fit it all where you can see it, but There's some bigger versions that are going to pop up here, so you may want to wait till you see the big versions. But this is where it is currently stands right now. And I'll kind of give you the play-by-play as we go. Just a reminder, trustees, you have 3 budgets that you approve annually. And the first one I'll go through briefly is the child nutrition budget. Obviously, your child nutrition budget is your cafeteria, and the majority of the expenditures in that are from your employees, cafeterias. The majority of the revenue comes from the meals and from reimbursements from the federal government. I just want to point out one thing to you here. You'll notice that there is a predicted deficit. This is one of the few times where you have a deficit that's actually a good thing. And the reason why is this number here. We have a fund balance of 1.7 million. The federal government doesn't like you to have large fund balances. And so paying down that fund balance over time is looked on favorably. And this is, if you can see the numbers, it's very sustainable, which is why we want it that way. Just also remember that child nutrition funds can only be used for things related to child nutrition. That's those particular employees or equipment. And so we have some pretty good equipment. There's not really any equipment replacements needed. So this is really the only way we can draw that down before the federal government gets upset with us.
So can we do any scholarships for, is there any students that have like large phone balances that aren't allowed to eat, that they have to eat those sun butter sandwiches, or are we a district where everybody gets?
I don't know off the top of my head. I do know that you can't use that money for that purpose, though.
You can't?
No, it would have to come from, they have very strict rules about those types of things. Usually it's a principal activity account that helps cover some of those things.
Can you find that? Karen, can you help us with that? Can you help us with that question?
You wanted to know if there's a balance
Because I know,
every,
Ask your question again.
yeah,
every student is having breakfast. You said everybody's having lunch and lunch?
breakfast and lunch for free.
Oh,
Okay.
we're free. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't even think about that. You're right.
That's why I was asking, is there anybody that's being impacted by?
No, we're a free district, so no.
Okay.
And they get snacks after school.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes, and this year, Ryan Sengel and Mr. Mendez, along with Athletics and Fine Arts, have set up a feeding program after school for all those events. We're expanding it. And on Saturdays too, we're going to try to help set it up within the limitations the federal government gives us.
We
But
got the after-school program for athletes for a while now, but expanding it is great.
so the next budget that you approve is the debt service budget. This is your INS, your interest and sinking money. You can see the estimated revenue. This is the bill that is due. You see that's a large excess amount. That is, of course, due to the rising property values. That's a good thing. Just a reminder, part of the plan that was proposed back in May board workshop was to reduce the INS tax rate of 1 cent. This does not include that. So just be aware that that's not counting that 1 cent reduction. Also remember that anytime you have this is good for taxpayers because we can use that, or I should say trustees can use that to pay down debt if they like. The outstanding loans for the last bond. And in fact, on June 17th, you may recall in Big Rocks that we were actually recommending that we do that coming up. This is another thing, the federal government doesn't like you to accrue a whole bunch of money in bank accounts and getting interest off it. And so whenever you have the opportunity to pay down some of that debt early, you want to go ahead and do so. And I rely on the financial advisors to let us know when it's time to do that. The next is the general fund. This is the one that we talk about most often. This is your maintenance and operation fund. This is the one that's got the big red on it that we've been slowly whittling away at. And frankly, we've done a pretty good job. Just a reminder, this is our guiding principles in bringing that number down. And really what we're doing is, I was talking to someone recently and it reminded me something that I probably should say out loud to remind people. We are really threading a needle in the district because you don't want to cut to the point where you really hurt schools. At the same time, you've got to cut, otherwise you risk financial ruin, which causes you to lose the district too. There's plenty of districts around the state that have gone bankrupt over the last few years, literally gone bankrupt, and that's no good either. And so we're really trying to chart a course, support campuses while reducing the amount in the deficit as we go. And this is kind of our guiding principles that we have here.
Do you guys stop after each one or not? Are you gonna answer, we have questions at the end? Because I had a question about the debt service.
I'm sorry, I apologize. We should probably do the debt service first then before we go into that one.
Okay, because we had a list of items that we were cutting for different reasons out of, I don't know if it was the bond project or materials, and we were asking if we were going to use that 12 million to supplement. What, do you have the list of the items that we were considering and what we could use the 12 million for? I guess let's answer that. You know, I have a problem with asking more than one question at a time.
Yes.
I'm going to rehab.
Well-
The first question, can we use the 12 million for anything else?
No.
Okay, then that answers.
Not- That's the difference between bonding capacity and your INS tax revenue that you're cutting in.
Okay.
The bonding capacity is what prevents you from going further with anything else. You can't spend more than you got told the voters you're going to spend.
Okay. So the only thing we can use this 12 million for is either sit in the bank and possibly get our hand tapped or pay off some debt.
That is correct.
Awesome. Okay.
Okay, so this is just a quick overall summary, and I want to remind everyone, since we don't have a tax rate election, one that's not been called, even though we may choose to do so in the future, what I'm showing you is without a tax rate election, because that is the budget that you'll be looking at. These are the revenue side, and I want to call your attention to these numbers here. I think this is probably the most important thing to remember. Right now, the budget that you would adopt would be that number of a deficit. With the tax rate election, it drops to that number. That's an adopted budget, not an actual. And the reason I point to those two numbers, because we'll be adjusting the numbers by function all the way up until we post it publicly, but I will not go over a number that you are uncomfortable with or comfortable with. Did I say that right? I'm not making those numbers go up. That's a better way of saying it. No matter what happens moving forward, those numbers will remain static. And as I go through further, I'll tell you why some of the numbers change here and there. Even the numbers have changed since I sent it to you on Friday. And there's a number of reasons for that. But this is just a really big overview. Any questions on that?
Just real quick, the 3.3 million, that's the end of it, end of ESSER funds complete, right?
Correct. You may hear, there's some ESSER funds that go through the state, but they're called T-class and LASSER funds, so.
And one last question, the recapture, like you said, all that, like the projected ones might be changing, but the recapture portion, is that the definite number?
No, that won't become definite until we have the certified values of property. And that doesn't come until closer to August.
Okay.
I know I've been requested this information a few times, so I want to just go ahead and bring this forward. These are the information on the costs that was spent on Manor Elementary School's building. You can see there that that's a total cost of the physical building for Manor Elementary School from bond funds. You see this is the furniture cost. Most of that furniture is going with the pre-K teachers to their classrooms. And then this is the amount of money that was spent from bond money and grants for the CDC. That's that number there.
So the top is the elementary school. And then the bottom is 180
CDC.
for the CDC.
So if you add those two together, that's how much money has been spent on the elementary school building, the whole physical building itself.
Out of the 2005.
Correct. Well, yes, and there's also money from the grant that's included in those numbers.
Yeah,
Okay, I was about to
math,
say,
but you
we got-
making us do too much math. Why can't we? Let me take out my calculator.
About $500,000.
Praise the Lord.
There you go.
If you carry
About
on.
520, 530 more.
So, but we're able to save some of that, and then didn't you say that, our pre-K enrollment has gone up this coming year?
What you see down here, this is the amount of money in payroll that's estimated to be saved every year, and this is maintenance and operation costs. So that's the other fund. This is mostly INS. This is the M&O when we have deficit. Right now, this is as of last week, there are 251 pre-K students that have applied or registered. As of the first day of milk for the 23-24 school year, that's how many pre-K students they had. Just to give you context.
So about 22 students more.
As of right now. We register pre-K students all the way into August.
Can you break down the savings of the one in payroll?
Would you like me to break it down?
So like, if we didn't let go of any one, how are we saving that much in payroll?
Gotcha.
No question is stupid, right?
No, no, that's not a question. So
I'm just like wondering, because you said we
No,
weren't
it's-
going to let anybody go.
that's great, and we didn't.
Okay,
All those persons were reassigned to different positions that were already vacant within the district. And so let's just take the custodial staff, for example. We had vacancies, we reassigned them to other custodial positions, so we no longer needed those. The assistant principal, we reassigned her to New Trail Elementary School. We had vacancy. That's how.
So what I hear you saying, even if we were to go back and end up changing back in 2 years, we would have saved 2.3 million. So even if we needed to reconfigure it, are we reconfiguring the CDC portion? Another $180,569? So it will already be there. We'll do whatever we're gonna do with the building. If we bring it back, we will still save the 2.3 million.
Correct. If you move the CDC back, you wouldn't need to have all those positions still.
Okay.
So that would be a much smaller footprint.
were we able to move all of the playground equipment that was purchased for us to open the CDC over there?
I do not know that we
What
did.
about the
I'm assuming,
modifications, the restrooms, because I know they had redid whatever.
the modifications for Wild Horse, last I checked, was under $10,000.
Okay.
And most of that was due to a fund to be put up for the CDC so that, I don't know what the rule
It's a
is
safety
exactly.
net.
Yeah, it's a safety fence. This next one is just some items to give some context to the next group of slides. One of the requests was to give some, and the next slides to give some, what did we put into the budget? What did we take out of the budget? These are, first two are spread across every function. So rather than try to put a little bit here, I just went ahead and grouped it all on one slide for you. This is the 1% increase in compensation, that's that cost. This is the rise in healthcare costs that were absorbed by I'm proposing to be absorbed by the district. This is just an FYI because we just looked at these numbers. You see we're going to realize this year under a $15 million deficit on $41 million of fund balance, which means we're predicting we will start the year with $26 million of fund balance. To kind of give you some sort of idea of difference between what we adopt and what we realize.
So we adopted a $23 million budget, and the deficit we actually had was 15, so
Yeah.
about $8 million.
Yeah, actually, we got a $24 million deficit, and we realized under a $15 million deficit, or we will realize an under $15 million deficit. Part of that is from savings we accrued. Most of it is from vacant positions.
Okay.
If we have the tax rate election and raise salaries by 3%, that will make our starting teaching salary the second highest. Just so you know. And the differences I'm about to show you are compared to the 23-24 adopted budget. Just because those are the numbers I've been using, I'm going to continue just using those numbers by comparison. Some of you may recall that you did some amendments. We started off using the adopted budget. I didn't want to change mid-course, so I'm just going to stick with the comparison to the adopted budget.
Why? I want to see what we did in the 15. Do you have the 15? Because the 15 million deficit, because it was an $8 million difference, right? So if we're comparing the adopted, I don't see what you changed and what is going to change from this actual year, right?
I understand what you're saying, like left column, what we originally adopted, with the right column where we're at and why by.
And then what's going to change next year? Because I don't want it based off what the adopted was. I want it actual.
Doing actuals is a little difficult. I can try because they're not done and invoices still come in. Let me show you what I've got because it may answer your question anyways. Because we will have what's different, so you can see that. And then I also want to let you, we have to make some assumptions just to get the budget. Right now, our budget is assuming 400 students increase at 91% ADA. If those numbers change, our calculations have to change. So this is just to give you an idea of how I put it together. You got your function 11, which is the instruction. You got your change in numbers. You got some of the major additions, not everything I didn't put, it was an exhaustive list. And then you have your major things that were removed from the budget for various reasons. I put a little asterisk there, just to, that's one of those numbers that changed significantly last time you saw it. And that's, I will tell you that we've had some issues trying to get the payroll numbers to pull over correctly, which is why I went back to tell you is that exceeds number. I'm not going to increase that deficit at all. I suspect by the time I'm done by Friday, this number is going to go up more, which means I'm going to have to find something in one of the other functions to reduce it. I'm not going to pull it out of the 11.
But you're going to give us that data what that is before.
If it's a major, yes. If it's like $10.
I don't want $10 in there.
I gotcha. But this kind of gives you, as I would go through these slides, will tell you what we've been doing to change all that. Next one is see the other functions. You got libraries, staff development, instructional leadership, school leadership, and counseling. Go along, if you have questions, please let me know. Got the next set of functions. So I got one out of order there. See, transportation, that cost is almost entirely the increase in salaries and benefits. So you may recall back in August, we increased the salaries, which allowed us to get to near full employment on the bus side. And then, of course, we did 1% and plus the benefits. And so that's why you see that number jumping up on transportation.
Back to the previous slide, I couldn't see the counseling. It was just
63,000 plus.
How is that possible? Like with the communities and schools, how do we only have 63,000? Because I thought that we were in some ways.
That's
So it's going to be in social workers. So the counselor is just one additional thing, but the social workers would be the ones assuming the communities and schools. Position. Okay.
Yeah, no. Yeah, so counselor is specifically school counselors, school counselor.
Okay.
Counselor, like you think outside, like a Lakewood City counselor, they all fall under that.
Okay.
I'll point out, we're not adding to the athletic budget. We found a bunch of stipends that had never been added to the budget. They were attached to vacant positions. So we added them to be full transparency that these stipends do exist. So that's what all that is. Plus MRA will have 7th graders like sports next year. This one also, I suspect we're gonna end up, comment in there, having to adjust. One of This is mostly your custodial staff, all your maintenance and custodial staff. There's a large number of people in that. And this one spiked in payroll. I suspect this one is actually pulling positions that don't exist. So I'm suspecting this number might be down by the time we get there on Friday. Again, I'm not going to let the deficit increase. The other big jump in that is the property and causality insurance. For those of you who know insurance, state of Texas, home insurance keeps going up, and so does our insurance for hail damage, wind damage, and tornadoes. So it jumped quite a bit.
And do you guys shop around for that? Or how do you know? That's like I shop for mine every year.
Yeah, we haven't, you do an RFQ, you post. I actually don't know when the last time we shopped for insurance is. I actually talked to somebody about shopping for insurance through like one of these large organizations. Like, actually it was a guy from TASB, but he told me this is everybody. So you can probably save us a little bit, but your reality is everyone's bringing that. He was kind of telling me it's not even worth having the conversation. You're not going to want to do through the trouble of changing what I've got. But it is something that we are definitely slowly going through all of these types of agreements to see if we can't find other savings everywhere. This is just holdover. You had already approved these. If you recall, these are all the new officers. Not all of them have been hired. Not all the equipment has arrived yet. So a lot of that gets pulled over. And ended up being vacancies this last year.
Can you go back on the data one at the very bottom? Like data processing, what exactly is that? Is that all the different softwares or stuff or programs that the district is constantly using, or what, like?
Function 53, it's David's department, but not necessarily instructional software. Instructional software would fall under a different one.
Okay.
This is all the back end equipment and technology that falls into there. Everything from servers to paying for the firewall that protects the computers to buying computers. There's a number of savings too. And we also, I believe, moved some of the security software that was sitting in this one over to this side. And so some of that is just putting the right coding next to it. This is also, you see this because we're putting off buying devices. When we told the leadership team about what was the most important thing, they actually rated having device refresh as one of the last things. They asked us, we would rather have that money go to instruction than we'll replace the devices when we actually absolutely have to.
What year refresh are we on? What year since the refresh? Because I know we went to one during COVID. So what year are we on? 3, 4, 5?
I don't know. I do know that I threw off the refresh plan purposefully because of this, because of the need to not get too much money spent out of the M&O budget. One of the things in the future when we do go for a bond that I'm going to propose to trustees eventually, there's something that you can do where you have what they're called, they're short-term bonds instead of your usual 30, 40-year bonds. You can get some short-term 5-year bonds, and you can buy devices through bond money so that it doesn't come and add to the deficit.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of districts have gotten themselves on a refresh cycle using that. So you set aside X amount of dollars, and then every year you spend some of that bond money to refresh computers. And then when the next bond comes along, you do the same thing, get us on a regular cycle that way. Here's your estimated recapture. You'll notice that that's not a new charge. It was just moved from one place to another place. There's one last functions here. Forgot to look this one on again. It's very, very little, like $20,000, $30,000 that's set aside for 199 purposes if they need something in child nutrition. And then there's property.
On that previous slide, the JJADP, we don't own to that anymore?
We do. That should say zero, not $0. I apologize.
Okay, what is the JJAAB?
It's the Juvenile Justice Alternative Education Program.
No wonder, girl, you had me do all the acronyms. I'm like, JJAAB. PP. That's what I said, I don't know. That wasn't part of my.
So if we send a student on a discretionary removal of the JJP, we have to pay for them. Either the court orders it or it's considered a mandatory placement, then we do not pay for it. So it just all depends. Yeah.
There's another one that I would like for you to clarify for our staff that's hearing from home. Can you go back to the 1% raise?
I was gonna ask towards that, just the raises in the market.
Yeah, if you can just for clarification, like the reason they got a 1% raise this year, but can you also go back and maybe speak on the previous raise that they got for clarification?
Sure. And I think of the thing to look at is here. So some years, over the last few years, the trustees have been raising salaries and keeping us very competitive with the starting salaries. At one point, we were the highest paid beginning teachers. Now, obviously, other groups caught up to us, but they were catching up to us. Trustees did provide a raise back in August also. We do, of course, need to be mindful of the budget, which is what trustees are doing, which is why we provided this compensation plan, which $1.1 million in healthcare costs is the equivalent of another % increase in salary is what that comes out to. So right now, there's a 1% increase to compensation pending a possible tax rate election. So if trustees support it and community supports it, we will be able to increase teacher and all salaries by 3% of the midpoint, in addition to being able to lower taxes by 1 cent.
So I know that I've mentioned this in the past, but like you just mentioned, 1%, we're covering the increase of health insurance costs. So in reality, I mean, is there some kind of like, you know, you're working on a marketing plan where it shows that in addition to the 1% that we're currently are giving educators, there's still that 1% increase in healthcare costs that we are absorbing.
Right.
So I know some other districts did not absorb that cost, and even though they got a raise, you know, their raise is being absorbed by the increased healthcare costs. So I think that's something, you know, important to mention in our pay raise, besides the potential 3% or total 3% after the TRA. Because I think that's very important to note.
It is, because it's a hidden cost that employees, they want to go chasing a higher salary, and then they see their healthcare bill and realize it's getting up. So I think you're right, that is a good selling point that we'll continue to put out, especially as we get to budget time. If the trustees decide that's the route they want to go with the budget, then we'll be able to say that with confidence.
So then then if we do the TRE rate, so the 3% will be a total, the 1 plus the 2%, that would be 3%. But in addition to that, we're covering the healthcare cost, so that's really 4%.
You are correct.
But you said you're gonna give us a side by side of what the insurance was this year? Like how much?
It is on your email.
It just came in.
Yeah, that's not what I was asking for us to actually see it as part of the budget meeting. I mean, I can look at it in email, but that wasn't the request. I wanted us to be able to have a discussion on as a team.
but if we want to add it to the next agenda.
Yeah, cause it's and I don't want just what we, so is this saying that, is there a 30%, 70% split? Like, I can give an example of what I'm asking for if y'all need it. Because maybe it's on the next. Yeah, let's just put it as an agenda because I can't enter this information on my phone.
It's not easy to look at that way. It's not easy to look at even on a computer with the
Yeah,
plans side by sides.
because that's what I was trying to figure out where it says like the out of pocket was for the PPO 50%. I'm trying to figure out what, and then 70% after DDD. I'm trying to figure out what savings that the actual staff have if they end up paying 30%, if any, if they end up paying 30% out of pocket. Because while we're saying, hey, we're giving this additional 1% raise, it doesn't appear just from, and I've only read it for 13 seconds. But, so we can just do it.
Yeah.
What part of this is Skyward?
Is Skyward, is that function 52, Dan? Yeah, it's tucked, I'm sorry, function 53, it's tucked in there.
Are we gonna do something?
I was gonna ask, that's what my question was, Skype, all these
We've been
different,
talking about it.
For years, because
the interface, it would be so awesome that you have one place where you can interface everything. It would be more efficient and effective for staff members, teachers, parents, everybody.
I put all that on hold because it is,
And I know it's expensive and I know it takes a while, but it feels like it's been taking forever.
inefficiency is also expensive.
Yes.
in my humble opinion, I actually think the process of moving into something new would actually be more expensive than any inefficiency Skyward is causing.
Oh, it's not Skyward, it's Manor. So, Skyward has new iterations of Skyward. From what I understand, we went in and tweaked it to make it Manor ready. And then everybody who tweaked it left and now we don't know how to use it. So I'm not saying that we need to have to go with someone other than Skyward. Is there a possibility of doing the new generation of Skyward that's not secure? How old is it?
Updated.
You're talking about their brand new, in the cloud iteration?
I have no idea what I'm talking about. How old is the last Skyward that we had?
Well, the Skyward has just only recently put out a whole different product, which is in the cloud. This one, I'm not sure how old it is, it's functional. The one in the cloud though has, I'll just tell you from other districts who went and jumped into it, is having major beta issues that they should have worked out before they put it out there. I would wait before we do the next iteration, so until they work out all their kinks in other districts. The other thing that's happening, we haven't really talked about it, but you all, the state is now going to start requiring, I forgot the name of their whole program, but they're basically going to tap into the system and start pulling out data in real time. Like every night, they're just going to pull data out of the system. What's really happening, in my opinion, is the state's moving into Skyward, some of Skyward's business. And we need to be careful because as the state moves in this direction and wants to be able to get into systems and pull out PEMS data, you know, at some point, you got to make sure that your systems are going to integrate well with the states because they are mandated. We don't have a choice. And they're only going to work with whomever they choose to work with or wants to play the game with them. So it's one of those wait and see. The state's going to start doing this next year. They did it with some districts this past year. They're going to start doing it next year, and I'm curious to see how well it works. And if you're wondering why, it's money. If they can figure out that you don't need all the money you need, they want to keep the money in their bank until you prove you need it, and this is their way of doing it. Frankly, they call it being efficient. I call it making sure that they get the interest on the money instead of letting us have it first.
Questions around ADA. Right now it's 91%. What is your plan to get us to 95 or above?
That is a long-term plan. And I'm not even sure 95% is even a realistic number in the state of Texas any longer, or the nation, when it comes down to it.
Well, I'm looking at the amount of students per, that's in Manor's boundaries that don't go to Manor schools.
We're talking about that, about
Yes,
marketing and recruiting.
yes, because I'm assuming if they come back, your ADA does it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah. Simple answer is to put out the best product out there we can that attracts people back into the system. The more we have good culture, an inviting culture, the more we do nice, good things, people hear about that, the more you can draw people back. The reality is, once they're gone, the time to get them is when they change over from school to school, like from elementary to middle school, from middle school to high school. Most research says the kids aren't going to change midstream unless something happens. But you catch them at those move over points. So that's always the goal, is to put out that product. I think that's the number one thing we have to do.
So are you gonna be able to like bring us a plan as to what you're like intentionally?
If you like to.
Yeah.
That
I mean, it's gonna, I'm only 1/7, but I'm like, I need some people to nod if that's what we want them to do.
This is just I was asked about future options for reducing the deficit. I want to be clear that I don't have any firm plan other than I know these are the places I'm going to go looking. And these are some of the options that eventually I will coalesce around some options to bring to you. Obviously, you increase enrollment. That's just what we're talking about. As enrollment increases, you get 6,160 right now for each student at full ADA. Reason I also bring that up is, of course, that doesn't account for you have to hire teachers for those, so it actually, you don't get the full amount, but deficit reduction. But that's obviously something that we need to be doing. Central office hiring pause, that's still in effect. That doesn't mean every single position we won't replace, but as positions come open that we can consolidate things, we're going to continue to consolidate central office. Just increasing attendance, and that's the daily attendance I'm talking about, that can increase the revenue. This is something that I recognize I would have loved to have done this, but just didn't have the capacity. We really need to look at the secondary master schedules and look and build some efficiencies between the schedules. I don't know if Dr. Benson still there. He's one of the good things about him. He is a master scheduler and he's worked in high school. So it's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring him on board, is because I'm the only other person in the district who really has experience with that.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So can you talk about not being able to do it? Can you help us understand how this will impact kiddos who have not passed STAR? Because I know that kiddos who have not passed STAR, the additional minutes that they're having to get under the House bill, a lot of that additional time is being delivered during advisory. Is that part of the reason why we were unable to do that, or we just didn't get to that?
I just didn't get to it. I think there's a number of people who really, really wanted to have advisory classes. I'm still open as to whether that's an effective strategy or not. There are some other ways of doing that same thing. Many districts have already gone there and eliminated that and are working other ways of doing this. Many districts have already done this with secondary campuses as a way of reducing the budget. I don't want to alarm anybody. There's a lot of ways to do it, and you got to take some time to look at it because there is a cost to you're right, removing those things,
Right.
Which is why I didn't want to haphazardly bumble through it this school year and take away something, and I wasn't really prepared to replace it with something. So that's why I want to start working on this. After we get to this budget, we will begin to cycle through for the 25-26 budget. As far as I'm concerned, 25-26 budgeting begins in September. That's part of the long-term thinking that we need to be at to be ready. These are just some other things. We can always obviously elect to increase class sizes. That's not necessarily as bad as you think, because when we begin to work with staff, and I want to get in front of staff, it becomes a choice between continuing to increase compensation and having larger class sizes. Some teaching staffs will say, raise my class size. Now, it needs to be appropriate. Obviously, you cannot have 50 kindergartner kids in the classroom. That wouldn't work. But we need to be open to considering that at this point. You can also consider passing on increased healthcare costs. Not saying we're going to do that. That's always something we can do. We do have 9 cents of M&O tax rate that can be raised. Those are called copper pennies. Just point out, you'll notice that only gets us $5.7 million because those copper pennies, you have to give $5.4 million back to the state. So you can see that copper pennies do not give you the yield as the golden pennies that we're talking about in the tax rate election. So if we ever did consider doing that, we just have to know that we're going to end up paying money to the state at this point. And then finally, of course, one of the whole parts of the strategy that we've been laying out is to try to stretch out the cuts as long as we could, because that's the end of the legislative session theoretically. We might have an idea if there's going to be new revenue.
So now that I remember, I know you were gonna put a spreadsheet or a one pager and for our priorities, at least for Manor ISD, for legislative priorities, like, you know, it costs $61.60 per student, you know, that we get, how much does it really cost us? And I just remember because the Legislative Advocacy Council is gonna meet on Thursday, Texas, in San Antonio, and we're already comparing, we're already reading. It doesn't matter.
We already have it.
Oh, we do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's been,
we've got the one page voted on, but we're going to do the pretty up version now. The graduation's over. The team's going to put
Okay,
something.
I have to look at it.
I am going to strongly, you already know what I'm gonna say. Vote against number 6. Like, not vote, strike that from the record. Nobody's voting. I'm gonna say that we should not consider passing on healthcare because it is a very small margin between top districts in pay and lower districts in pay in Central Texas. And if you even take $1,000 away, we've changed the game.
That was my highlight of my conversation earlier.
Okay, good, because I wouldn't know.
And I completely, yeah, that's right.
That's why I'm bringing them up, because as we move forward, that's the feedback I need to hear. If you want me to find dollars elsewhere, I shall do so.
Because then it eats up what we give in raises.
Well, yeah, at the end of the day, it's what you take home.
Yeah.
So all of that, and she's right, all those little things add up at the end, and our employees should be aware of where some of that's, you know, where that's coming from.
Well, it's what, because, well, I'll give an example. When you take home and then you have to go to the doctor and they charge you $882, did I really take it home or did I hold it? I held it for $13. Yeah, so I'm gonna say. Sorry. Wait, you're not supposed to have.
y'all need to get this one. Okay,
Bucket.
I ate her cat.
I just put up here as a just reminder of the tax rate. If we do decide to do the tax rate election, we increase salaries by 3%. We fund campus officers and mental health supports while still reducing the tax rate. That is the going one pager, just as a reminder that that's what a tax rate election can do for us.
For those of you in the community watching.
There you go.
For the community who's watching and everybody else, this is, I can say this right now, this is a good deal. Not allowed to say for that as soon as, if we decide to call one, I'm limited as to what I can say.
Mhm.
And so then finally, just going back to looking forward to the 17th, these numbers are not going to change. All right, that's my commitment. We will find a way to make sure those numbers don't change, even if something, unless something is completely disastrous. But I don't think there's anything out there that's going to significantly change those numbers right now.
Even those numbers change, we still need to know what happens within the number, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions? I guess
We
we asked
already
all the
asked them.
questions.
We asked,
We don't have any additional.
Confirmation.
Good question.
Go ahead.
I'll just ask a question. In looking at grant funding and not looking at federal and state funding, but what is the team's ability as far as capacity to take on additional funding sources in managing programs and looking at some opportunities for grant funding that would support instruction, that would support, transportation, buses, and things of that nature. Is there the ability with our staff right now to be able to do that? Or are we going to be looking, if we are pursuing grant funding at a foundation level, would we also need to be looking at personnel costs to include in those grants? Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like? Because that's additional revenue that obviously wouldn't be accounted for, and those would come to the board for approval as we're going after them or receiving those.
So, I will say when I first came here, one of the issues I saw was the overwhelming number of grants that we had tied ourselves to. It was difficult to see how we were even going to accomplish some of the things we were committing ourselves to, and frankly, we didn't always do it. Now that we've built some efficiency and we are getting focused, I'm all for grants that are aligned to the work that we are moving forward, because then it's value added as opposed to we're doing something, a new thing over here and a new thing over here. Okay. Now, obviously, all our grants need to be really focused on improving those core goals that you have assigned to me and those superintendent constraints of teacher retention and academics, college career readiness. Those are the things that they should be hooked to. So those are the type of grant fundings that we would definitely be after.
Yeah, so I was just going to say one of the areas too, right? Now that we're bringing the roles, the social worker roles in-house, that's an area that we wouldn't be supplanting, right? So we would be supplementing funding. And I think that that's one area that we really need to be focused on with the cuts that we're making. And those, we've got to be very careful about the funding that we are pursuing and ensuring that we are not doing things we shouldn't be with the money.
Yeah, it was my understanding that when we brought in Ricardo Villalobos, that he was a grant fund, that his role would be to manage grants and to go after grants. And so has his function been changed? Because I know that we have grants that have expired, and the very thing that Ms. Rodriguez is speaking to is exactly what my belief was. We brought him on to do. So I just want to ensure that hasn't changed.
No.
His role.
He is still the grant manager, and he's one of the reasons why we'll be able to do this capacity. He's also one of the reasons that I can recognize where we haven't always gotten to the grant. And there's some internal issues that we need to work out with communication and coordination between all the various departments, because that shouldn't happen.
And we're coming in with a new, different CFO that gives you that opportunity to establish those rules.
Right. So ultimately, now that we start focusing on grants that are value added to what we're already moving forward, the goals you've set, then absolutely. Ricardo.
We still have him accountable.
Yeah, he's my employee now, actually, my direct report.
Oh, okay.
Time being.
Well, yeah.
I'm your CFO.
And he knows about grants.
I didn't say I was a good one. But that's why I'm Karen.
Everybody, he has some type of goal per year of things that are focused. He's aligned with.
That I do not know. I will have my first round of meetings with my finance staff. I don't know when they're set, but Cynthia set them all for me.
Yeah.
Any more questions or discussion?
The trash cans.
They not only gone.
All of them,
The trash cans.
All trash cans. There are no trash cans anymore.
We was gonna make it straight.
Confirmation of next board meeting, June 17th, 2024. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
You already know. I got a motion to adjourn.
At 6. A motion by Ms. Durden, I have a second. Second by Ms. Rodriguez Barnett. All of those in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Have a great rest of your week.
Everybody.
And have a great July off.
Are we really home?